Okay, so we're working with the JOSM editor for OpenStreetMap, and probably the most difficult thing about doing this GNS name import merging is working with the layers. So we're going to go over loading the layers, and then we're going to go over working with the layers a little bit. And once you get familiar with it and comfortable with it, it's no problem at all, but it, might take a second the first time. So I have this is the GNS import data, which is the currently active layer. That's what this check mark means. And that's what all these nodes are. And of course they come in rows because most of them are approximate. And then the layer underneath that is what's called the data layer, the OSM data layer. And data layers are basically any layer that is directly connected to OpenStreetMap. You can have more than one data layer, but the big difference between the data layers and any other layer is that the data layers, when you say upload, those are going to OpenStreetMap. And most of the other layers, you're just working with, either imagery, or this is just this is a local file that has this information on it. So when I say save, this just saves it to my local hard drive. So the key to this is obviously the imagery layers. And I did an explanation on how I load or how I adjust the imagery preferences so that I have these additional imagery layers. And I number mine because I like to stack mine in a certain order. So I'm just going to go ahead and load these. Bing. And Mapbox Satellite doesn't help me in this instance. I've already checked, so I'll skip it. Landsat 8 normal color, use that all the time. Landsat 8 false color, use that all the time. The U.S. Army JOG map, use that one all the time. And the same thing with the AMS 1955 map. Basically all these layers, you'll use all of these layers for every single task. Almost all of these layers for every single node you'll be flipping back and forth. So you can see all these layers came in. This column is the active layer column, and then this next column that looks like an eye, this is the part that sort of controls whether the layer is displayed or not. And you can see, you click it, you turn it on and off, and it appears and disappears from the display. These two are almost always on. But these additional layers, these map layers, these are what you'll be turning on and off as you try and find things on the map. They're stacked, so if this layer, any layer above this one is, when I turn it on, is going to cover this layer up. So now you can see this is the Landsat normal color imagery. But as soon as I turn on the Army JOG layer, this layer is completely covered because this layer is completely opaque and covers it. The only layer that's an exception for is the OSM data layer. That one you can still see in the background. That one never gets totally covered up, which is great. It's the way, I don't know why JOSM works that way, but it happens to be perfect for this task. And since this AMS map is on top of the JOG map, if we turn that one on, it completely covers the JOG map. Now, it completely covers the JOG map because it's 100% opaque. But any of these layers, you can adjust their transparency, and that's what this button does for you. So if we're at 100% here, but if I take this down to 50%, you can start to see that the JOG map comes through. And you'll actually use this. This gets used a lot of times. You'll change the transparency when you're setting the alignment on these things, which is not something we've talked about. But you generally need to check the alignment on all of these maps. So we would do something along these lines. So we'll turn on this Landsat. I'm going to turn off that layer just so that we can sort of see, I can see the roads here pretty well. So I'm going to turn on the JOG layer, and then I'm going to come over here to the transparency, and I'm going to bring its transparency down so that you can sort of see. If you look along the road here, this is the road that's drawn on the map, this red and white road. And then in the background, this white line, that's from the imagery layer. That's from the the Landsat. So you can see if I bring this all the way down, this is all Landsat because the JOG layer is 100% transparent. And as I bring it up and kind of go back and forth, you can see it lines up pretty well. You can even see, if you look closely, you can even see this is, you know, probably stream bed. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure this is all river. You can spot all of this river here. So if I come back to the Army JOG layer and I start bringing it up, you can see that its river, this is its river drawn. So this one is pretty well registered with what's actually back there. So you can kind of see it, you know, it's registered pretty well. So this one's pretty good. And I probably wouldn't do any imagery background adjustments on this one, because that looks pretty good. So I'm going to turn this, I'm going to put this back up on 100%, and I'm going to turn it off. But if we look at the AMS layer, this is a whole different story. So now this is the AMS road that they have drawn. I guess this is the river. Yeah, this is the river. So let's play with the transparency on this one. And you can see that here's the road in the actual imagery, and here's the road as it shows up on the map. And one, it's not especially detailed, and two, it's definitely not in alignment. And this is the same thing true of this river. Here's this river going across, coming down, making this loop, and then going up. And if you find that river, yeah, actually that river's not too bad. You can sort of see that river here. That's this line right here. It actually follows pretty well. But what I usually do is you know, I'll set the transparency at like 50%, and then I'll come up here and I'll say I need to make a new imagery offset. And then, you know, while it's transparent, I'll drag it, and I can kind of see there's a city here, there's a big city here, and there's a big city here. This AMS map is never going to match exactly, but you can kind of get it. You know, you can sort of get it lined up. And you sort of pick what you want to line it up with, you know. You can line it up with the road. You could try, if you look in this area here, I'm trying to align it with the river. But getting it aligned in one place with the river, you know, here it's pretty well aligned with the river, but it gets off. It gets off just because this map is not the world's greatest map. And so places, you know, so you can kind of line it up and average it out. You can see if I line up this part pretty well with the river, now my road's pretty far off. And if I line my road up, now my river's pretty far off. And that's just the nature of this AMS map. So, you know, get it kind of averaged out just about right and say okay. And then you can, you know, turn the transparency all the way back up. So use the transparency if you're trying to adjust, you know, the imagery alignment, you know, and you can adjust it to the, try to stick with roads and river features and things like that. When I'm doing, if I'm stuck and I'm really trying to figure out where a city might be placed, I may very well do the imagery adjustment to, let's turn this back on, do the imagery adjustment to already placed cities. You know, let's say I'm trying to figure out, I have some sort of choice on Landoma as to where this might actually be. And you can see, here's a couple of, here's 3 already placed cities. This one, and this one, and this one. And here, there you go, here's Nyandahoon, pretty far away from Nyandahoon on the AMS map. So I would come up here, and I would say, AMS 1955, I want to work on the imagery offset. Now watch what happens when I drive this around. It will be impossible to get all of these circles to actually encompass where they really are on the map. So if I get Nyahoon here arranged, Jalahoon looks pretty good. Now I'm way far off on Manjahoon. That one got way far off, and I got even further away on Nyandahoon. But the point is, you can sort of adjust this. You know, maybe I'm trying to do Landoma, so I'm going to try and get, these two are never going to line up. This one's never going to line up, and this one, it's just, the map just isn't that accurate. So, but you could say, oh, alright, well, here's Manjahoon and this Hiwebu. You know, you could try and get those. They're pretty close to this Londoma that I'm trying to find. Never mind that this matches up with this. That doesn't matter at all. I'm really looking for these back here, what's already on the imagery. But, you know, so you might decide to try and use those to see if you can figure out which of 2 or 3 little ones are this one is actually closest to. But generally, try and stick to the big features. Oops. Try and stick to the big features like the roads and the rivers. So I'm going to go ahead and, that's not too bad. Okay, and that's working with layers.